Hello, welcome to Serenity Vape. What are we talking about today?
August 11th, House Oversight Committee sent a letter to the Commissioner of the FDA asking for the banning of vaping products, not cigarettes.
What's that?
Well, they cited a study that was just published in the Journal of Adolescent Health. And what that study says is that vapors are 3 to 7 times more likely to catch COVID-19.
That doesn't make any sense. COVID-19 isn't caught through vape. Unless you're sharing your vape with a COVID positive person, but other than that, you probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah, and when you look at, how many people they surveyed versus were tested, more vapors got tested.
Mm-hmm. Good.
About 3 times as many.
Mm-hmm.
And the same
shows that vapors more worried about their health.
Yeah, it does show that vapors are more concerned about their health, and I would say more responsible about it.
Yeah.
But you average out the number of people who were tested to tested positive, and the difference is like statistically insignificant.
What's the numbers on that?
13.1% of vapors who were tested positive.
Okay.
13.7% of the never users who were tested positive. So it's like 0.6%.
So there's pretty much absolutely no difference between the two. I mean,
no.
In the study.
No.
So how are they saying that you're more likely to catch COVID?
I don't know that they can.
But they did.
And they did some number fudgery the same way that study by Glantz that said you're more likely to have a heart attack from vaping did number fudgery. A new study just came out that replicated their experiment and then and then corrected the bad math. Found that was wrong, but that article by Glantz that was the cornerstone was a cornerstone against vaping, was retracted last year. They didn't comply with the editors and make the correct edits. They skewed their own numbers, and the journal actually pulled it.
So they just are straight up lying in this study now.
Yeah.
They're 13 to 13%. 13% of vapors contracted COVID, 13% of non-vapors contracted it. It seems like just people contract COVID.
Yeah.
At about 13%. All right. So,
yeah. And this was handed right to the commissioner of the FDA.
Wow.
By Representative Krishnamoorthi. He's head of the House Oversight Committee.
Can people look at this study for themselves?
Yeah, you can find it just by searching. The article was written by Bonnie Halpern-Felsher, who is a known anti-vaping crusader.
Can we link it below?
We will have it linked below.
We'll link it below. Okay.
We will not only have that linked below, but we'll have some more information about it.
So you wrote something.
I did. I wrote a
open
letter rebuttal to this, and my biggest concern is that politicians using bad science makes science look bad, and we've seen the political rush and the moral panics to handle new technologies like vaping.
Right.
And usually it comes down to, what about the children?
Right, like last year with the vaping outbreak, all they were saying that this is all about vaping when it was actually about illegal THC cartridges.
That were cut with vitamin E acetate, or other harmful dilutants, and some
They're
of
trying
the
to ban vaping for that. And
they're
when they
trying to,
know that if you ban vaping, people are going to try to make their own fluid.
and
And
last year,
everything worse.
and last year when vape bans were threatened and some states did ban vaping, calls to poison control in the month of September nearly doubled as people trying to make their own e-liquid accidentally poison themselves.
Wow. So here we go again. Round 2, right?
Round 2 of
false studies.
False studies and people, jumping the gun. And I've done a lot of research. Like, I did some research. And I did some more research. And I did some more research. And I have more saved on my computer. So it's
Yeah, that's a lot of articles you read.
highlighted and annotated. And man.
So it looks like you did more research on this than the people writing this.
This letter to the FDA, and I would say I've done about as much research as was cited in this study.
How did they come about this study? How did they poll people?
They posted for 8 days an online survey targeting 13 to 21 year olds.
How very scientific of them.
Well, yeah, and it was these were ads on social media, that you could click. Like,
so
there was no accountability.
Anybody could have lied, and they didn't poll people and actually into the study. They just
online
Twitter.
Yeah, well, not even Twitter.
Not even Twitter, huh?
Like,
somehow I think that might make it better, but I don't know by how much.
I don't know. I've seen some great Twitter surveys by like Dr. Farsalinos.
But they're not scientific
and
studies.
He wasn't saying they were. He said they were informal surveys. I can find that Twitter thread, and I'll post it in the description.
So you also said something weird that I found, that they didn't take much time after they pulled the survey.
The survey was pretty short, 8 days. Maybe that's
and then
that's
they
fine.
came out with their.
It came out within like 4 weeks, and it was received, and then I think published like 2 weeks later in the Journal of Academic Health. I don't know how it made it through the editorial process. I do understand.
Especially with the numbers completely debunking what they're trying to say.
And what weirded me out was when I looked at the top. I'm looking on. I think I found it through Elsevier. It was open article. You can find it yourselves. And you don't need to go through a library database or anything like that. It said it was a corrected proof.
Wow. So, let's talk about the lost credibility in published articles now. Doesn't this take a hit?
Does it make every article about vaping look like BS?
Right.
It does, and I think we saw the problem with that spread, not just of people's like vaping habits. Like, so many people were misinformed. Altria, Philip used to be called Philip Morris. They make Marlboro, and they own a large share of Juul.
Mm-hmm.
They reported that people were going back to cigarettes, and they proposed that it was because of misinformation about vaping, and because people weren't, and we know people who aren't able to keep vaping, many of them may go back to smoking cigarettes. We've had several customers tell us that when they came back in after they were informed
about the bad information,
that it was not e-cigarettes.
Right.
It was illegal THC cartridges that had vitamin E acetate, and in some cases almost 5,000 times the approved level of pesticides in there. Like, it was really had nothing to do with e-cigarettes. But what we know, it happens during bans, right? When something's prohibited, a black market shows up. It just blooms.
Yeah.
And you've seen this in India right now. You see it in South Africa. You see it in dozens of countries.
So why is it that these U.S. Studies are coming out all against vaping, where other countries have actual real studies that are showing that vaping is 95% safer than smoking and this and that? What makes our scientists different than the rest of the world, you think?
I have a few theories. We in the vaping community often talk about the Master Settlement Agreement, which,
right,
1996, 5 major tobacco companies testified under oath that nicotine wasn't addictive, but behold, it was, and they got sued, and they have to pay out a portion, a fixed portion, and then a scaling portion, of their profits every year to the states that signed the Master Settlement Agreement.
Right. So
and that money,
they pay the states for every pack of cigarettes that's sold,
yeah,
pretty much. So states are losing money,
yeah,
as people switch to vaping.
And what happens with that money? How that money is spent? I don't know how to figure that out. I tried.
I've heard that it's going right back into the tobacco fields.
It can be used. It's kind of an unallocated slush fund, and it can be used to pay farming subsidies to tobacco farmers.
So tobacco's paying tobacco.
Tobacco paying tobacco, and all those major companies that sign the MSA have to do some kind of anti-smoking,
right,
anti-tobacco campaigning.
Right.
You look now at what they've been doing, like the Truth Initiative,
which has switched completely to vaping when
it's
supposed to be anti-tobacco.
Yeah, and it's not just those.
It's tobacco companies funding anti-vaping now.
Yep. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it just keeps coming back to people not trusting anything about vaping. And it's done the most for reducing smoking.
Right, yeah.
That's great. I think when I looked at the National Youth Tobacco Survey and the PATH study and stuff like that, last year, less than 6% of middle and high schoolers smoke now.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah, and it's...
Now vaping has gone up, obviously, in that, but at least they're off of not smoking, which kills.
It kills half the people who use it.
Studies are 100% sure that tobacco use causes all kinds of illnesses. Now, we don't have any studies out that show any deaths to
related
vaping.
Right. And we've been studying this for going on 10 years now.
10 years, yeah. So
if somebody had developed, if someone who'd never smoked but vaped had developed lung cancer, you'd have heard of it by now.
Right.
The other thing is a lot of these studies don't differentiate between former smokers that vape.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also this huge argument that dual users...
Did they do a study for smokers catching COVID at all?
What they found... So your short answer is yes. What they found was that something about smoking has a preventive effect. That it doesn't, that they're almost less likely to get COVID-19. Those cases are more severe,
right,
is what we've been hearing. But it does seem to have some protective effects, so much so that in France they were studying how nicotine patches might help medical workers. Yeah.
So nicotine in your vape might help.
It might.
Go on. If they're using patches in hospitals. For
Yeah, I don't get why
Get
they
you-
don't. I don't get why they don't use CBD. And in fact, the FDA is now studying a synthetic CBD to help with COVID.
Really?
So it does look like there's good, there's good stuff going on, but it gets covered by this political, moral rancor.
Grandstanding.
Crazy, and it really does seem like it's about getting votes, and most vapors will tell you they'll vote against a candidate if that candidate is likely to ban vaping.
Right.
So people are out
We
there.
vape, we vote.
We vape, we vote.
Yeah.
Stop the lies. Quit confusing people. Quit misinforming us, because it's had effects, I think, in
And
other.
all it really does is discredit actual real science. And when real science comes out, people aren't going to believe it. You have to keep with what your study shows.
Yeah.
Now we're going to we're going to link your rebuttal down below.
Yep.
Your open letter. You sent it out to everybody that's involved,
Mm-hmm.
and probably some newspapers and stuff like that.
Some newspapers, and I'm hoping that they have the courage to actually do this, even if it's an op-ed.
We really
I
do want
did
you
my
to.
diligence on this.
Yeah, we want you to read the study and then read his rebuttal,
Mm-hmm.
and decide for yourself who's really telling the truth here. Well, that's what for us from Serenity Vape. I'll see you next time.
Stay safe and vape on.